I believe it's very important in anything you do to understand the objective or the purpose of what it is you're doing, or as Stephen Covey would say, begin with the end in mind. And so the goal of this meeting, this is executive leadership from all walks of government, business, our nonprofit and faith-based organizations, our utilities providers, all of our stakeholders who are critical, not just every day, but especially in a disaster. Get those leaders in the room and sort of discuss where we're at in our preparedness for this upcoming hurricane season, what we can expect, what we've done, and hopefully maybe identify any gaps that we have so that we can be better prepared to serve our citizens. Very grateful for all of you and for everything that you do every day, but especially in a disaster. So welcome. And I would start pointing out all the distinguished people we have in the room, but there's a room full of those. And there are many that were invited and for various reasons couldn't be here. And an example of that would be our North Shore Legislative Delegation. I spoke to 2 of our state representatives last night. Today is the last day of the legislative session, and they've got a lot of work to do. And so duty calls, and they're not able to be here. But they are proud of you and of our desire to better serve and better be prepared. And so one last item before we get into the program, I want to introduce Amanda Williams. Of course, we're here at Church of the King, and we realized based on what we wanted to do with this meeting, this is the first time we've done it this way, and I know we're missing some important players, maybe that didn't get invited, and I hope to correct that going forward next year. But we needed an area to meet that was fairly centrally located, easy to find, and that could accommodate the numbers that we need. And Church of the King was generous enough to provide us with that space. And so I want to turn some time over to Amanda, who wears many hats with the Church of the King, but an important one that she wears is in disaster response. And so I'll let her talk to you about that. But just want to extend my personal thanks to them for hosting. So Amanda.
Hello, how are you guys today? Good morning. Okay, so my name is Amanda Williams, and I am the Disaster Relief Coordinator here at Church of the King. I've worked alongside many of you guys, and I'm excited. It's a privilege and an honor to host you guys today. I have a couple of things before we start, some housekeeping items. So the emergency exits are located there, back there, and over here. Our restrooms are right out these doors and to the left down the hallway, as well as we have coffee and water back there available for all of you guys. Again, it's a privilege and an honor to host you guys, and I'm so excited and even honored that you guys are here today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amanda. All right, so to start, we will open with an invocation. It'll be offered by one of our parish council members from District 14, Jimmy Strickland. Following his prayer, we're pleased to have a live performance of our national anthem from a local resident here, Alex Haywood. I appreciate him sharing his talent with us. And we'll have a presentation of the colors by our St. Tammany Parish Sheriff's Honor Guard. And we ask that you stand for the prayer and remain standing until we're done with the presentation of the colors, and Amanda will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you.
Most gracious and Heavenly Father, we come to you once again just thanking you. Thank you for allowing us to come out into your house of worship. Thank you for allowing us to be here. Lord, we ask that you just keep your hedge of protection over this state, over this city, over this parish, over this country. Lord, we ask that you just calm the storms. We pray that you keep all the first responders safe, protect their families, Lord. We hope that no harm or danger. We know you have power over the winds, over the rains. We ask that you just cover us, Lord. And Lord, we ask that you allow us to be resilient if a storm does come, Lord, and that we would come back even stronger. Lord, we ask that you to cover all the leaders, cover our families, our children, and we just thank you for being such a good God and a most powerful God, and we ask that you just cover us, order our steps, let everything we do be pleasing in your sight, and that no matter whatever happens, that you get the glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
by the dawn's early light, what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched, were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. And oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Now the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Alex, for that beautiful rendition of the national anthem and for the beautiful prayer. And thank you to our St. Tammany Parish Sheriff's Honor Guard for presenting the colors. You may be seated. Thank you. Next, we'll be pleased to hear from our parish president, Michael B. Cooper. Following President Cooper's remarks, we'll get a briefing from the National Weather Service, and we'll go to that point. President Cooper.
Well, good morning, everyone. Beautiful, warm, humid morning as we would expect in June, the beginning of hurricane season. Clint, I want to thank you and your team, Collins, Semino, and Vanessa Wall, for what you do for emergency preparedness here in St. Tammany Parish, getting us prepared, not only our team, but working with our stakeholders and partners to be prepared as we approach 2025 hurricane season. And Amanda, thank you for your generosity, and please pass my regards and thanks to Pastor Steve Robinson for use of this beautiful facility for this purpose. As you all know, and first, General Mahfouz, thank you for being here. You're going to be addressing shortly. And thanks to all of you taking time out of your busy schedules today to be here. This hurricane season, 2025, is now underway officially June 1st, last week, and officially through November of this year, November 30th. And as always, we know we must be prepared and vigilant for any type of storm event, hurricane event or whatever type of disaster or incident we have to respond to. And meeting like this, organizing meetings like this, assures us that we're all on the same page. And as Clint mentioned, it's not a hurricane prep season, it's a year-round preparation that goes into making sure that we are all on the same page. Clint and his team are located in downtown Covington at our Emergency Operations Center, and along with our data center being located in the EOC in Covington, we're assured that we have the technology and the resources available to respond from a central location. And we have an operations room that include many of you that are in here today at that workstation when an event arises. So today you're going to hear from state and local leaders offering insights and updating us with any changes. And as we know, since the beginning of this year, there have been many changes locally, regionally, statewide, and even nationally with regards to the resources that may be available for addressing disaster after a disaster may come through, after a hurricane may come through. So again, we're thankful for our partnership. When we work together, our parish wins, our state wins, and let's be prepared. We urge our citizens to be prepared as well. Of course, we all hope and pray that we do not have an incident this year, but we must always be prepared. So at this point, I'm going to call Clint back up and introduce the next speaker, or would you like me to do so? Representative of the National Weather Service. Thank you all very much for what you do.
All right, hey, good morning, everyone. So I am Julie Lesko. I'm the Senior Service Hydrologist with the National Weather Service, New Orleans, Baton Rouge office. I work very closely with Clint on all of our river concerns, and I'm here to present our hurricane season outlook. So next slide, please. So this is just a quick recap of what happened in 2024. We had a few retired storms. It was a relatively active year, but there were a lot of storms that actually went out into the Atlantic Ocean versus making landfall, but there were still some significant storms, and we also had Francine. Next slide, please. This is just a quick overview, the shot of the names of the storms we have so far this season, and which hopefully we won't have very many, but these are the names. Next slide, please. All right, so here's the official outlook that just came out recently from the NHC. We are expecting to have roughly, I'd say 13 to 19 storms, some of those potentially major. We're looking at about an average year, maybe a little bit above average, as there are still very warm Gulf temperatures, and that is going to play into a factor as we go through the season. Next slide. So, when we talk about the Atlantic hurricane basin season, we are talking about everything that's in that red circle. So we're not just talking about what comes across the equator or into the Gulf. These are anywhere storms can potentially form or move to. So it is a huge region. So when we look at those numbers on that last slide, and you think, oh wow, that's above average and so much, we have to remember that takes into account an enormous geographical region, in which the Gulf and Louisiana is really a small fraction when you think about that. Next slide. So what is it looking like really for 2025? Well, indicators are saying that we're actually going to be more towards a relatively neutral La Nina, El Nino, and I know we throw those terms around a lot, but all that is saying is that there's no one particular way that we think storms are going to go this year. And we never want anyone to focus on those factors anyway, that it's a El Nino year, so we're going to be safe versus something else. Because we all know, everybody in this room knows, it takes only one. All it matters is one storm that hits our area that we have to deal with. So that's what we need to be prepared for versus thinking about the overarching idea of how these storms form. So, what we have this year that's new and that's exciting is the earlier potential tropical cyclone outlook. What that means is usually the last few years, there's about 48 hours that the NHC would potentially forecast for a storm that wouldn't have been named yet. Now we have about an extra 24 hours to get that track out there, to get that information out there for everyone to start getting prepared early, even if it's not a named system yet. So that's something to watch for. The experimental cone graphics. Now this was what was really exciting about last year, is that we had those watches and warnings for land that goes further inland. So it used to just stop along the coast. That used to cause a lot of confusion. Now when those colors go further inland, you can kind of see the full impact, especially if you're more inland into the parish or other counties under those warnings. A little bit about verification. I'm not going to bore you with statistics, but go ahead. This is just saying that over the course of 20 years, the range of how the NHC can predict landfall has narrowed. Now, we all know this is the 20th anniversary of Katrina this year, but 20 years ago, still a few days out from landfall, there was over 200-mile error range. Now we're getting it down to within 50 miles. So that is a huge improvement for the accuracy of landfalling hurricanes. And if you think about it, some people have a commute of 50 miles. So that accuracy gives you a huge idea, but we don't always want you to follow exactly where that path is as much as the cone, because there are the impacts outside of it. Again, just more science. All right, my favorite topic, Clint knows this. Social media and social meteorologists, right? Go ahead. There are only so many things that we can tell you ahead of time when we talk about social meteorologists. There are, realistically, the information we have in 7 to 10 days isn't going to be as accurate as people would like you to think. Realistically, what we have in that time frame is an indication that something might occur. Right, we're not going to be posting certain plots, spaghetti models. That doesn't tell anybody really anything. So when we're looking at this, what we have is outlooks from NHC. We have text products. We have things that are narrowing and going down more specific in time. So what are those red flags that we call of social meteorologists? What are they posting and what do they look like? Are they just posting pictures? Are they just getting it for clickbait? Are they monetized videos that they want shares, whether or not it's accurate? So those are the things we have to think about while being responsible to the public that we serve. Are we doing them justice by sharing something that we don't have confidence in? And that just causes for confusion. So these are all posts and examples of things that have occurred over the years. One of the posts that has the dual storms going into the Gulf, one of the last years, was actually from 5 years ago. But people clicked on it and thought it was something that was actually happening. And is it on the level? Is it something that's up and up? Is it something that you would share to your own family to make them worried? So think about what you share and what you post from a personal but also professional. And this is what we really do. So focus on those things that are, is it coming from the Weather Service? Is it coming from trusted local broadcast meteorologists? Is it coming from your own trusted departments, being in emergency management and other places like that? The computer models still have issues, and we know that. We are constantly trying to predict the future. If everyone plays their bracket for March Madness, we know that it is, we know how hard predicting the future is. So give us a little grace sometimes when that comes into mind, and that we will always give you the best information we have at the time we have it. And the forecast that does come out is a human-based forecast. It's not just a model, right? So these are professionals. These are leaders at NHC who are experts in forecasting these storms, as well as your trusted people here. Okay. Another thing is, when we look at these image and social meteorologists, if they're posting anything that doesn't have any impacts, are they any good? Do these images show you exactly how high the wind is gonna be, where the rain is gonna be? Is there gonna be flooding? Will people be cut off from getting to home? Will evacuation routes be an issue? These are all things we have to think about when we follow what's going on. And if that's not being provided by somebody you're following, that may not be the best person to get your weather information from. Go ahead. So now we're going to review what we can provide you and when to get your trusted weather source. So like I said, 7 days out, we're going to have the outlook from NHC. We're going to have those areas, the development, the yellow, the red, the orange, that kind of gives you that indication of how something is developing. About 5 days out, that's when we're gonna get the track. That's when we're gonna get the cone. But we don't always want people to super focus on the cone, because that is just telling you where the center of that storm's gonna be 2/3 of the time. Gotta look at the bigger picture when we go forward. 60 to 72 hours out, that's when we get the surge information, right? That's usually when the storm is well modeled, it's been honed in, we know where it's gonna get to the coast. That's when we can start more accurately predicting the surge levels along the coastlines. And then about 48 hours out, that's when you're gonna see the actual hurricane watches and warnings, or tropical storm watches and warnings, and that is sort of the phase in which a lot of things need to get locked down and completed. All right, so the NHC advisory schedule. So this is the schedule, this is what they've always had. They have a certain amount of advisories that come out pretty much every 4 to 6 hours, right? And there's intermediate advisories where they might update the position of the storm and things like that. But outside of these advisory schedules, if we get a new advisory, we put out the information, the emails that most of you are on, we'll do the live briefings, we'll do recorded briefings. If you call us an hour later after that and tell us, hey, what's going on, we're not gonna know. There's only so much data that can be collected in a period of time between the reconnaissance, satellite, actual observations, and we have to wait for those to come in to get another accurate update. So that's why there isn't updated something every hourly. That just can't happen, because that's not how the observations work. So it's limited. So I know people like to fill in the gap, and when you don't have new information, you start hunting for it, and that's where you may get misled down those other pages where they're just throwing out model data that has no meaning. So when you know the time frame, you can know what you're accurately gonna get, and what you're gonna get is gonna be the real deal. Again, the cone, people love the cone, I love the cone. We all get thrown off by it. We get hyper-focused on where we think it's gonna go, but we all know that a hurricane that's following a very short path that might make landfall in 50 miles can still be a 200-mile wide storm. So 50 miles versus 200 miles, that's not a good area to focus down on when you've gotta think of the bigger picture. And somebody might get wind, but another person might be getting the rain. Somebody else might be getting the freshwater flooding. Somebody else might be getting tornadoes. So these are the whole picture you gotta look at when you're thinking about the entire coastline of Louisiana. Categories, they're scary. People like to know what a category it is, but again, it's just a wind scale. Wind is dangerous and deadly, but still not as deadly as surge or the water aspect. So again, when people are like, I'm not gonna evacuate if it's less than a 2 or 3, okay, but would you evacuate if you're gonna get 70 inches of rain, like Houston did back in 2017? So these are all things to think about, and not base actions or directives or your plan simply on whether or not it's a category of a 3 or 2. In the end, that's only one part of the story. For preparations, your wind speed probabilities are gonna be super important, because it's telling you available at 39, 58, and 74 miles per hour, which are critical thresholds for when finishing your your preparations and when those probabilities and timing of when it's going to get there. So if you got a 70% chance of 39 mile per hour winds, but still like a small 20% chance of 74, that small 20% chance is still enormous when you talk about the risk that those winds are going to bring. So that's another thing to pay attention to. The time of arrival is one of those other critical parts of preparations, and we always talk about this. The earliest time of arrival is usually when you try to get everything wrapped up that you're going to wrap up, especially for those 39 mile per hour winds, because usually that's when the EMS, everybody wants to be locked down, preparation should be finished, shouldn't be outside moving furniture or lawns, everything should be done and should be starting to hunker down. So your earliest time of arrival for those winds means that there's only a 10% chance that those winds are going to get there sooner. So that should give you a decent buffer. Then the other reasonable time of arrival is your 50-50, which is, okay, this is when it'll likely get here. So we were factoring that 10% chance gives you a better buffer to complete things by, and to have everything locked down, people moved, resources in place, things of that nature. The other most important thing that's more important than the cone, honestly, are these hurricane threats and impacts graphic. All right, the reason we're saying that is because it's giving you a color-coded level, and this exists for the 4 main threats. This is giving you a color-coded of what the most extreme likelihood is going to be for your area. So for winds, for example, next slide. This is an example from Ida, and I love this example because when it made landfall, we had a swath of what we call the deterministic winds of where it's going to go. But all the area that's in that dark purple needed to prepare for 110 miles per hour wind or greater. And when Ida made landfall, it made that little jaunt to the right. And we know the people in Jefferson, Tangi, even St. Tammany saw a little bit of those higher wind swaths that they might not have seen if they were just looking at what have occurred. So we have to consider that buffer of winds in those preparations. And this is really great because it's telling you what level of wind you should prepare for, broken down into 4 easy colors. Storm surge flooding, again, one of the most dangerous parts of the storm is the flooding and the surge. As a hydrologist, I always mention the surge and the flooding because that is where a lot of the danger is, and that's my area of expertise. So it's based on the probabilistic surge that the NHC is going to put out. And it's going to provide the reasonable worst case scenario of the level of water that you can see in that area, and that's color-coded again to over places that are over 9 to 10 feet. Now, it looks scary on a map, but if you realistically were going to go to an open coast in an area that's not surrounded by levees and you're standing out there and you're trying to imagine what 10 feet of surge will look like, or even higher, and you think about how scary that is in the open, you start imagining 5 feet of water above your head, or 10 feet of water above your head. And that really puts it into perspective versus just looking at a color of the map, especially for those people who live outside the levee and are in that risk, whether their homes, their properties, their businesses. So again, very important factor to think about of, would I be underwater right now if I was standing here at landfall? Good way to put it into perspective. And flooding more, the freshwater flooding. Now we're talking about the rainfall. So we got the surge, we've got the rainfall. A lot of times you've got the river flooding coming down. Rain occurs so fast down here. We know how quickly the summer storms we've had that's picked up 3 or 4 inches in less than an hour. Now we're picking that up for 12, 13 hours straight. River flooding and people getting cut off and evacuations are one of those main things you've got to worry about, because the wind, you might evacuate for the wind, but are you going to evacuate if somebody gets cut off from roads? Going to evacuate if there's flooding? A lot of things to consider when you wrap up what kind of category it is and when you're making your preparations and your plans. You have to take into account all the threats, not just one. So when we talk about the rainfall, this is what we're going to look like. You're going to have this color map of all these pretty colors, and you're going to, again, see whether or not it's 5 to 10 inches, more. We all know how quickly something can stall and form, or you get repetitive bands. These are these things you've got to think about, and it's hard to narrow down just a few days out because you don't exactly know where those bands are going to set up. But that is also why, if you go forward, We also have those HTI graphics for rain, all those pretty color-coded. Tornadoes is one of those things that usually occur in the right front quadrant. We usually know that, but they can occur anywhere. And when you're looking at a very strong storm, something that has high winds, it's hard to get those embedded tornadoes to do more damage than sustained winds already are. But tornadoes are still a threat, and they can still be a threat well beyond where the hurricane watches and warnings are. So if you are making your preparations and you're maybe not in the full hurricane watch or warning, maybe you're just a little off to the side, to the right, and just a tropical storm, at what point may you be dealing with heavy rainfall and tornado damage while you're also preparing for other things or potentially helping your partner parish or county? So these are also things to think about, because tornadoes can be as far as 150 to 200 miles away from the center of the storm. Next slide. So what can you expect from us decision support-wise? Well, I can tell you right now, we are never going to hide anything from you. We're never going to hide a storm for you. We will be on the ball there, and we're 24/7. You know, I'm sure all of you have called us at some point asking what's going on, and we will give you the best information up to date that we have, and we will be issuing the watches, the warnings, the emails, the Facebook Lives. Some of you have tuned in for the Facebook Lives at times in other storms and events, and we'll be doing those same things. We're 24/7 hunkered down, just like the rest of you are. I rode out Ida in our building, just like a lot of you rode out in your own EOCs. So we're there right with you, and we will always give you the best information you can, when you can, 24/7, 365. And that's about it. So resources and questions, we have a lot of email lists. Lauren, our WCM, who's amazing, put together these slides, and some of her contact information is on there. But really, the main thing is we're here to help you, to keep people safe. We want to give you the best information we can that we realistically can when it comes to all the threats, not just the wind, the flood, the rain, the tornadoes. So we're here for you, and we appreciate Clint, wherever he is now, inviting us. You moved. Thanks so much, Clint, for having us. We really appreciate being able to come and talk to you all today and work closely with the communities.
Greatly appreciate Julie. She is a tremendous resource, and we're very lucky to have our local office right here in St. Tammany Parish in Slidell. So next, I have the privilege, the honor of introducing our GOSEP director, our state GOSEP director. And I'm going to share a story. When he was first, as many of you know, is one of the changes that President Cooper alluded to, is that GOSEP was moved back under the National Guard, and we have a new GOSEP director in Jason P. Mahfouz. He's a brigadier general, and he's also the assistant adjunct general for the National Guard. He wears a lot of hats. And so when that happened, I reached out to someone that I know and trust that is served a long time in the National Guard and someone I respect. And I asked him, what can you tell me about Jason P. Mahfouz? And he said, when you think of a leader, when you think of all the attributes of a leader, smart, confident, cool under pressure, and instills confidence in the people that he's around or she's around, that is Jason Mahfouz. And I was kind of taken back by that, like, because he just said it. Like, he didn't even really, wasn't even much of a pause. And so I was like, man, you know, sounds like a pretty impressive guy. And then I met him. And he didn't disappoint. What he said is true. And so we're very, very, in my opinion, my personal opinion, very lucky to have him as our GOSEP director. And so I'd like to introduce Assistant Adjunct General, GOSEP Director, Brigadier General Jason P. Mahfouz.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and Director Ori. Clint, thank you for that introduction. I don't know if I'm deserving of all that, but I appreciate the opportunity to be here and to share just an overview of the GOSEP, our preparations, and just answer some questions that I get frequently subsequent to the governor's announcement on the 20th of March about the merger of the Office of Emergency Preparedness and the Louisiana National Guard. So with respect to who I am and where I came from, I've been serving in the Louisiana National Guard for 37 years. I was born and raised in Lake Charles, Louisiana. I'm the last of 8 kids. I joined the Guard right out of high school. True story, because the Marine Corps wouldn't take me. I went to MEPS to be a Marine and just didn't work out. But everything has a way of working out, and I'm really glad it did. I got a lot to thank the Army and the Army National Guard and the state of Louisiana for. And this opportunity is just the next thing on the list. It's the top thing on the list right now. The organization could have moved me on a long time ago, and I'm privileged to continue serving. And that leads me to my first comment, which is thank you for what you do. It's an honor to be among first responders and mission partners. A lot of people seek out professions where things are routine and predictable, and the only thing that's routine and predictable in emergency management is that somewhere at some time, right now as we speak, there's a crisis going on, and someone is running to go fix that problem, and you represent, and the agencies that you represent are in the solutions business, in the problem fixing business, and it's great to be among other like-minded folks in emergency management. So GOSEP was the first state agency to merge, or the announcement of the merger. Subsequently, LaDoge has made recommendations for the merger of DCFS with the Louisiana Department of Health. Those things are, under staff study right now, but it's pretty common knowledge that other state agencies are probably going to have to go through some mergers. These mergers are looked at fairly deliberately prior to their announcement. And a little bit of background on the merger of the Louisiana National Guard and GOSEP. So a lot of stakeholders came to the table and gave their opinions to the governor about GOSEP and its need for a structural change to focus on more efficiency. The Louisiana Sheriff's Association, the Louisiana Police Juries Association, the members of the House and Senate Select Committees on Homeland Security. So I believe the decision was very well informed. We're beyond that decision now, but I think it does help put things in perspective when I'm addressing some of the questions that I've gotten in the past of, why the change, and why the change, when the change was made. The focus on efficiency and the structural changes within the merger of the two agencies do not take anything away from the mission. The mission remains the same. The end state remains the same. The governor, as our commander-in-chief, has given us very clear commander's intent, and we are moving towards that intent, which is alleviate suffering, prepare for the worst, restore infrastructure, and on citizens' worst day, allocate resources where the greatest need is. And that's really, with preparation, it always has to be mission focused, and we tend to categorize things as emergency managers into the most likely and the most dangerous. National Weather Service tends to look at things that way too. Most likely, you usually have higher confidence. Most dangerous, you plan for those things and you allocate resources within the means that you have to prepare for the most dangerous. But by and large, we all have to work within the resources that we're provided, and those resources are usually framed around the most likely threat. And for us, the most likely threat tends to coincide very closely with the most dangerous threat, which was a tropical cyclone, major hurricane of 3 or above. I'll get to federal changes in a minute, but with the focus on the structural changes and my statement about no impact to mission, I'm the only person that works at GOSEP full-time wearing a uniform. Everyone else who you and within your agency have been accustomed to working with on the hazards mitigation side, the preparedness side, or even in the grants management side, all of those individuals remain the same, and there's nothing that's going to happen to change that. The efficiencies that Louisiana National Guard and GOSEP hope to gain over time it's really back office kind of things. It's the way we manage resources, our unique contracting capabilities between the two agencies, and the way that we manage resources and going forward will be very much the same, with a few unique authorities combined with the Louisiana National Guard and the Governor's Office of Emergency Preparedness. Within the consequence management portfolio, which is really what we do as emergency managers, because you always have a plan, usually the most likely, typically focused on a habitual mission that we're all accustomed to doing within your agency as emergency managers. But I think one thing is common, regardless of what your mission essential focus for your agency is that leadership and resource allocation. Everyone who works in emergency management is charged with those two things. Leadership is essential. National Weather Service talked about messaging. Messaging from leaders is one of the most essential elements of leadership. And then resource allocation. Resource allocation, once you get into consequence management, is focused on the priorities of effort. The citizens, the municipalities, the parishes that are affected the greatest get the greatest amount of resource allocation. And those things are generic to the emergency. As we look for the merger to become more operationalized, once the bill makes its way through, it's signed by the governor. It was started out as House Bill 274. We had several working groups, a lot of input, again, from the Louisiana Sheriff's Association, Louisiana Police Juries Association, the First Responder Subcommittee. 9 amendments later, it went to the Senate. The Senate conferred it for a vote this past week. It was voted on Sunday. It passed both in the House earlier and in the Senate unanimously. And I think that was all of the work that had been done behind the scenes prior to the governor making the announcement, that all of the stakeholders who really, are trusted agents for the governor and what they do within emergency management were satisfied with the bill after we made some of those amendments. I'll focus back on resource allocation for a minute, because there are some things that are going to change in the way we operationalize resourcing and logistics that, again, will be transparent to most of you, because the delivery of those services is going to remain the same. The end state and the goal of those services is going to remain the same. But because of what has been an over-reliance on certain emergency support functions within the interagency coordination that GOSEP normally does, earlier this year, the state put out a request for proposal to enhance our efficiency in logistics. So rather than maintaining large stocks of generators and pumps and light sets and all the other apparatuses that tend to be needed in an emergency, the Office of State Procurement put those out in an RFP to establish what is called by contract the logistics support area, and they're scalable. They're like all of the things in emergency management, they're scalable from a 4 to a 1, with 1 being the largest logistics support area. So if there was a regional impact of a storm in this area, the state would establish an LSA. The LSA is run by contractors. Those pre-positioned assets that are currently under contract didn't cost the state anything. The state as we begin working with our mission partners at NOAA and National Weather Service to model the storm, and once we gain higher confidence of what that storm's going to be, the state will pull the trigger. They'll get the RFQs in, the request for quote, and that way it becomes a lot more routine and predictable, and we're not doing crisis contracting, which tends to frustrate the process in the past. And many of you have been on the receiving end of some of that frustration. So this was a move to smooth that out and do it during blue sky days when we're not trying to do this emergency contracting in the moment. So that's one of the first moves of efficiency to improve logistics within the resource allocation model. Resource allocation, if we do get into the opening of points of distribution or pods within the communities, there will be no change to that. Typically, they open within 24 to 72 hours post landfall when conditions are acceptable. If there's been an evacuation, they don't open up those pods until citizens are allowed to return. And then when commerce gets back on its feet, those pods shut down, pretty quickly after we restore commerce in the community. If we do get into an enduring pod operation in any community, you'll see the National Guard come in along with the Unified Logistics Element, ESF-7. We'll open that pod using resources we have in state warehouses, and that will be turned over to a contractor at some point to run that pod. So that will be the only change. It should be transparent to the end user of that pod. The person pulling up in the car to get their water, MREs, won't know that the only difference will be there won't be a soldier or an airman standing on that pod, after it's been in operation for 72 hours. If it's going to go beyond 72 hours, it makes more sense to have a contractor do it because they can do it so much more efficiently with respect to resources. The Guard is pretty expensive. To mobilize the Guard is not a cheap proposition. I'll kind of tie this overview up with some comments on the changes at the federal level. Since the 20th of March, since I was appointed as the director of GOSEP, or as the interim director of GOSEP, there have been almost a constant barrage of news cycles associated with what is happening at FEMA. The first casualty of that change was the BRIC program, the Building Resiliency in Communities program. There's a lot of headlines about what the state was losing under the BRIC program. By and large, though, what wasn't reported in the media is by and large, most of those grants, applications that were under consideration in the BRIC program were very quickly, we pivoted to put those grant applications into another public assistance or hazard mitigation grant that is going to be enduring. The ones that were currently under obligation under BRIC, those resiliency contract or those resiliency grants that had already been awarded, the funding is going to remain intact for those. So the portfolio of GOSEP under the grants management section is 19 open disasters. If you look at everything that's still on the books that has an open period of performance, going all the way back to Katrina. Katrina is on its last period of performance extension that will end this fiscal year. But if you go back that far, you look at those 19 major disaster declarations, all which have hazard mitigation and public assistance grants, individual assistance grants tied into them. It's $24.9 billion, almost $25 billion worth of federal obligation moving through the system, and that just can't be turned off. So the one thing that we've gotten in conversations with FEMA and DHS is that anything that's under federal obligation, just like when the BRIC program went away, it's going to remain in its execution cycle until it's exhausted. Those hazard mitigation and preparedness grants, HMGP, and EMPG, which really affects the community as emergency management preparation grants. We don't have the final tally on 25, what fiscal year 25 is going to look like. Those NOFOs, those notice of funding opportunities that come out typically at the beginning of the federal fiscal year, those things were delayed because of the continuing resolution and the absence of a budget at the federal level. But when we finally got a budget, and the resources at the federal level were being shuffled around, we expected that NOFO to come out right at the end of second quarter, and still hadn't come out. So I can't tell you with any confidence that I know it's going to be next week or the week after, but we believe that by the end of month of July, we'll have those NOFOs out for HMPG, and that the communities that count on those grant application processes will have the opportunity to submit those grant applications in the system, and those funds will be locked down somewhere between now and the end of the federal fiscal year in September. Okay. FEMA Administrator Hamilton, who was the acting administrator, gave some testimony that was contrary to Secretary Noam DHS's testimony at a select committee, and he was replaced by now Acting Administrator Richardson. I've had a couple conversations with Acting Administrator Richardson with respect to, he's brought together a lot of the Gulf states, as well as California and some folks up in the northeastern part of the country that tend to be frequent flyers, especially with the FEMA. And he's doing some listening sessions. We have Mark Cooper, former GOSEP director and former chief of staff in the Edwards administration, who is sitting on the FEMA Review Council. We've had several engagements, and not just GOSEP. He's had listening sessions and working groups with the Louisiana Sheriff's Association and Louisiana Emergency Management, Preparedness, LEPA. He was at the Lima conference. He did some listening sessions with some select groups of folks, and we have another one coming up. All that to say, the only confidence I have about what's going to happen at the federal level is it's going to change. Just recently, as yesterday or the day before, the president made an announcement in a speech that he was given, or a press conference he was given, that FEMA's going to go away after this hurricane season. Well, it may. The agency currently known as FEMA may not be known as FEMA, but the agency that's going to be responsible for delivering federal resources to the state is going to remain intact. It may just be called something different. Our FEMA Region 6 administrator, that many of you know is a household name, at least in the Gulf South, is Tony Robinson. Yesterday, Tony Robinson announced his retirement. His last day in the office is the 24th of June. His replacement has already been named as the acting administrator. He'll get the permanent title here pretty soon. But Tony has said, look, before I leave the office, somewhere between now and the 24th of June, we're going to make a trip down to Louisiana, Texas, and Florida, and we're going to meet with senior leaders of the state. And he's going to pass off his responsibilities. But nothing that FEMA has signed up for this current hurricane season. The logistics that we count on, the funding that we count on for Cat B, preparatory measures, that all remains intact. So there is there's ample reason to be concerned, but those concerns are probably better. The emotional energy and the intellectual gymnastics that's necessary to figure that out is probably on the backside of this hurricane season. So I'm focused on the near obstacles and getting through this hurricane season and in the next emergency, whatever comes between now and the end of hurricane season, whatever the next emergency is. GOSEP will be there to respond to it as we normally have when it's locally managed, state supported, and then federally resourced if it comes to that. So I know this wasn't designed to be a question and answer. I'm going to be here for the rest of the morning. If you need to catch me offline and have a discussion, or you need my business card, I've got some of those too, and we can exchange contact. I'll be happy to talk to you more offline. But I'll end this kind of like I started with. I'm privileged to be here amongst like-minded emergency managers who are running towards danger and fixing others' problems. So thank you for what you do.
And so just to be clear, we're hopeful to have time for questions and answers at the end. In fact, that's, to me, one of the most important things that will come out of this meeting. Hopefully it will answer any questions that people have, and hopefully we can provide those answers today. And if not, we know we have homework, there's gaps that we need to close. And so that's sort of one of the purposes of this meeting. So next we will hear from, we'll get a 2025 briefing from our Executive Officer, the 205th Engineer Battalion, Major Henry Coniglio, with the 205th. Following Major Coniglio's briefing, we'll then get a briefing from Lieutenant Kevin Cephalou with Louisiana State Police, Troop L. He will give us an update in regards to contraflow, and we'll go to that point. Major Coniglio.
All right, good morning, St. Tammany Parish. My name is Major Henry Coniglio III. I'm the Executive Officer of the 205th Engineer Battalion, headquartered out of Bogalusa. We have units in Covington, which is right on Columbia Street next to the fairgrounds, Slidell, Hammond, Marrero, and Franklinton. Today, I'm going to give you a presentation on the capabilities of the 205th Engineer Battalion. The 205th land space includes St. Tammany, Washington, Tangipahoa, St. Helena, Livingston, East, and West Feliciana. During an all-hazards event, we stand ready to deploy forces to perform general engineer operations, rescue operations, and logistical support in order to save lives, protect key assets, ensure health and public safety of the citizens of Louisiana. Our mission sets include scheme of engineer operations and general support of parishes I've already listed to make up AO Hammer. We pre-stage equipment to facilitate a rapid response for rescue and engineering operations, and then we also provide L&O at the parish EOCs for Washington, St. Tammany, and Tangipahoa. Okay, so here I have our concept of the operation. It's broken down by decision points. And how it looks is our decision point number 1 is H minus 96, and that means it's 96 hours before the incident makes landfall. So at that time, we're going to alert all the engineer battalion soldiers and be prepared to report for the upcoming incident. We'll also contact our L&Os and let them know to be prepared to report to the local EOCs, and our full-time staff will remain on duty. Decision point number 2, so this is H minus 84 before landfall. Our L&Os will initiate contact with parish EOCs. We'll start our key leader engagements with our command leadership. And then we'll pre-stage engineer assessment teams, engineer work teams, search and rescue teams on projected areas for landfall. Decision point number 3, this is our pre-storm operations. We'll have soldiers starting to arrive at armories, building combat power. We have our L&Os reporting to the local EOCs, and then our engineer assessment teams and work teams will move to the projected threat area at this time, along with our high water vehicles and our boat assets. And then we are prepared to provide security for shelters and local law enforcement as well. Okay, decision point number 4, this is 24 hours before landfall. And at this time, we have committed our assets for all our pre-staged locations. And this is where our teams will do our final checks to get ready for the impending incident or storm. And then that'll move on to decision point 5. This is where the incident makes landfall. And at this point, until the hurricane, tropical storm, or event happens, We'll be in hunker down mode until it moves clear, and then once the storm has passed, our ISAR, Integrated Search Area and Search and Rescue, our engineer assessment teams and engineer work teams will push out to support all the citizens of Louisiana. And also we'll be prepared to provide heavy lift for sandbag support and damming operations, establish and support lily pad ops, and shelter security as needed, along with local law enforcement security as needed, or local law enforcement support. And that moves on to where that's our reaction to the storm, and then we go to recovery. Moving on to our task per execution matrix, which is this is our scope of missions for the 205th Battalion. So we have engineer work teams, engineer assessment teams, rotary wing aircraft sandbag support. We don't own the rotary wings, but we do, in conjunction, support sandbag lifting operations to provide damming. We have our parish LNOs that will support our Louisiana Department of Wildlife LNO support for search area and rescue, lily pad operations, and then security, and then local police department support. Next slide. Okay, so this is one of my final slides. So we do, as the 205th Engineer Battalion, we specialize in general engineer work teams, engineer assessment teams, by clearing highways and roadways, debris removal and water drainage mitigation, and assessing the damage of the area, providing recommendation for assistance to St. Tammany officials. An engineer work team can actually be cut down into a route clearance team for more expedient response. As you look at the slide, this slide depicts our engineer assessment team, our engineer work team, and our route clearance team going from left to right. And this is a templated set, so really once the engineer assessment team goes out and sees and makes the assessment on how the areas have been affected, we can modify and reconfigure the work teams and route clearance teams as needed. Okay, so in summary, those were the list of the missions that the 205th Engineer Battalion can support, and how our concept of the operation is with their decision points. And in summary, as the 205th, we're here for you in your time of need. And also to reiterate, thank you very much for having us up. I appreciate Clint for inviting us here to go over our capabilities, and I'll also be in the crowd if any questions come up during the Q&A. Thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. Unfortunately for y'all, I have been tasked with giving you an update on contraflow. That could be good, that could be bad, we'll see. Before we get into contraflow, I'm going to talk about contraflow, but I want to talk about preparation and planning. Okay, preparation and planning is the most important part of contraflow. Before we talk about that, let me tell you who I am. My name's Kevin Seflu. I'm with State Police Troop L. Been there for 18 years. I was a Troop L during the last contraflow in 2008. Contraflow is organized chaos, right? If you're here in 2008, you understand what contraflow is. If you were not here, hopefully you will not live through another one. The main emphasis we want to tell you about contraflow is proper planning. Proper planning is imperative, right? Proper planning is everything. I know I'm speaking to a lot of first responders in this room. Proper planning is everything for y'all. We want y'all to push to the public that contraflow is a last resort. Contraflow is the last part of a much larger plan. If we've reached contraflow, we have exhausted all of the resources, and it's a last-minute effort. We want people to plan properly, to have ideas of what they want to do prior to contraflow starting. Make proper preparations. That's the message that we want to portray to the public. Go to the next slide. How do you prepare? How does the public prepare? We prepare by listening to public, state, and local officials. We want to pay attention to what the weatherman says. Not just any weatherman, but real weatherman, right? Not the Facebook, but the actual weather people. Pay attention to what they say, follow their guidance, and make preparations. Preparations for hurricane season start now. They don't start 72 hours out. They don't start 30 hours out. They don't start 20 hours out. Your preparations need to start now. Matter of fact, one of the preparations we often always forget about in Louisiana is cut your grass, right? Everybody knows you got to cut your grass before a hurricane comes. So let's make sure we get that grass cut 72 hours out, right? Go to the next slide, please. Home preparations, everybody here knows this. Prepare your home, brace your home, get everything in place prior. Next slide. Talking about let's go to car preparations. Next slide. Have everything ready, right? We want you to prepare. I'm beating a dead horse, I'm being monotonous, we all know this. Next slide. Here's the meat and potatoes. What does contraflow look like? What is it? Contraflow is part of a phase evacuation. Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Phase 1 is at 50 hours, phase 2 is at 40 hours, phase 3 is at 30 hours. Contraflow starts at the 30-hour mark. 30 hours before the tropical storm force winds meet the coast. That's when contraflow starts. Go to the next slide. If you want a picture of what that looks like, here it is. That's your evacuation zones, 50, 40, and 30. Next slide. Why does it look like that? This is your elevation map. This is why it's imperative to listen to your officials, to listen to what's being pushed, to follow the guidelines. What you have to realize is for the phase 1 evacuation, you can determine the path that you want to take, right? You can decide where you want to go. For phase 2, we suggest it. And then for phase 3, which is contraflow, you no longer decide. Once contraflow starts, you're going to go where we tell you, which is going to be as far north as we could get you. If you want to plan to go to a family member's house, the time to leave is before that 30-hour mark. So any plans you make sure it's made to be out of there before contraflow. Something else we want to push to the North Shore. If contraflow begins and you're on the North Shore, stay away from the contraflow routes. Y'all have adequate infrastructure to avoid the interstates. Do not get on the contraflow routes unless it's absolutely necessary. Use local roadways. If you're from here, you should know what they are. We will do our part to keep those roadways open. Use the local roadways, stay away from the contraflow route to navigate the North Shore. Next slide. Contraflow. What is contraflow? Contraflow is a much bigger picture, but I'm going to specifically talk about today what contraflow looks like on the North Shore. Contraflow on the North Shore has 3 primary diversions. Those 3 diversions include 2 contraflow lanes, all right? We have a causeway diversion for causeway traffic. We have an I-10 diversion, I-59, I-12 split, the 59 split, and then we have an I-55 diversion, right? So we have 3 major diversions. It is impossible for state police alone at Troop L to do contraflow by ourselves. Just to give you an idea about Troop L, at any given time, Troop L has approximately 60 commissioned troopers. Remember that, because when I tell you how many troopers or police officers it takes to do contraflow, it's a whole lot more than 60. So one thing I'd like to express to y'all is we are going to rely heavily on the people in this room if contraflow is called for. We cannot do it by ourselves. It's a partnership. We have to do it together. Without y'all, we cannot do it. Next slide. The 30-hour mark before tropical storm force winds hitting the coast is when contraflow starts. As in the previous slide, contraflow is a 24-hour period event, 24-hour event that we move a lot of people as far north as possible, right? To initiate contraflow, we have to have multiple people involved. It's not a local thing. It's not a state thing. It's a multi-state thing. Everybody has to be on board, right? The governor of Mississippi, the governor of Louisiana has to be on board, as well as local officials. It has to be a Category 3 storm, right? It's got to be a slow-moving storm. The decision to initiate contraflow has to begin 72 hours out. That's a long time, right? Especially with the way hurricanes have been coming up lately, we don't have that time. They get in the Gulf, they get in the hot waters, and they rapidly intensify, sometimes 24 hours out. So understand that contraflow is a 72-hour, has to be made at 72 hours for the plan to take place. You go to the next slide. Look at that for 1 second. For one 24-hour period of contraflow, we take 196, just say 200 police officers. It takes 200 personnel to facilitate contraflow. I told you before, Troop L has approximately 60 commissioned officers. We cannot do it alone. So I want to impress upon y'all the importance that if contraflow is initiated, we need your help. We cannot do it by ourselves. Next slide. I've already talked about this. The decision to make contraflow requires the governor of 2 states, local officials, and there has to be a mandatory evacuation. Next slide. What does contraflow look like? Contraflow is simple, right? I told you we have 3 diversions. We have an I-10 diversion, we have a causeway diversion at 190 and 12, and then we have an I-55 diversion. And if you just look at that map for a second, it'll give you an idea. Next slide. What is the causeway diversion? So understand that when we start contraflow at that 30-hour mark, we're going to start it. I hope that everybody on the North Shore has already enacted their plan is where they want to be. At the 30-hour mark, when we start moving a lot of vehicles out of the city, I hope that the North Shore residents have already made their proper planning and preparations. Traffic coming across causeway, what will they do? They will normal flow across the causeway. You go to the next slide. They will normal flow across the causeway. Just south of I-12, we will push the majority of traffic onto I-12 to head west, right, towards Tangi. So they will normal flow across the causeway. The majority of that traffic will enter on I-12, and we will push them west towards I-55. Once that traffic gets to I-55, we will push them north on I-55 towards Brookhaven. That's what that diversion looks like. Go to the next slide. If you look at that, that's just an overview of what the intersection looks like on US 190, just south of I-12. Next slide, I'm sorry. Next slide. Another overhead picture, just to give you an idea of the intersection. Next slide. What does the Slidell diversion look like? So the Slidell diversion is going to be your I-10 twin span traffic, right? Where do we put that traffic? What happens to the people coming across the twin spans? Very simple. The majority of the traffic coming across the twin spans will be pushed north. They will be pushed to north into Mississippi, okay? If you look at contraflow, there's a crossover on I-10 just south of the 10-12 split. That traffic will be pushed contraflow. Now we will take normal flow of traffic, we will then push them into the oncoming lane, and then we will run them on I-59 well into Mississippi, okay? For people that are in contraflow, there will be no, once you get past the rest area on I-59, there will be no stops in Louisiana for the contraflow side of traffic. So if you do get pushed into the contraflow side at I-59, once you get past the rest area, your next stop will be in Mississippi. What happens to the traffic coming in from the casinos? If St. Tammany residents were late getting back into the parish, if they were coming from the coast, they're going to be coming on I-10, right? I-10 from the coast, coming back into St. Tammany Parish. How do they get home? That traffic will be pushed to I-59 north. So anybody coming in from the casinos, from the coast, from Florida, that get caught in contraflow, they will not be allowed to travel to I-12 west. They will be directed north on I-59. Once they get north, they can get off at some exits to take back roads, US 11s, 41, to get back to where they're going. It is possible, but it's not going to be fun to get back home at that 30-hour mark for contraflow. Next slide, please. Mostly what I talked about, the diversions. I-10 traffic coming across the twin spans will be contraflow north on I-59. Anybody coming in I-10 west will be pushed up I-59 as well. Next slide. Same thing, everything I've already pretty well mentioned. Next slide. To just give you an idea, if you look at the very bottom of that picture, you'll see a little crossover in the median. That is the contraflow crossover. That is where the twin span traffic, the majority of it, will be pushed into the opposing lane of travel to continue I-59 northbound. Next slide. I'm not going to talk too much about this diversion because it's not going to ultimately affect y'all. It's not in this parish. But we will have an I-55 diversion. The I-55 diversion is a crossover on I-55 that is just north of I-12. What does that look like? Traffic coming from Manchac or from New Orleans on I-55 will be crossed over. The majority of the traffic at I-12 will be crossed over to contraflow up I-55 into Mississippi. The traffic coming off the causeway in St. Tammany Parish will be pushed I-55 north on the normal flow side. So understand that contraflow is a major operation, right? You go to the next slide. Contraflow is a major operation. It requires a lot of personnel, and that is only doable because of the partnerships in this room. So just be prepared that if the contraflow trigger is pulled, we are going to rely heavily on the partners in this room, the partnerships in this room, to make it happen. You go to the next slide. Another message we want to push out to the people of St. Tammany Parish is, should we experience a major hurricane, don't be in a rush to get back. Listen to the media, listen to the public officials, listen to the local news to see when it's safe to come back. If you have any questions after contraflow, after the event happens, call the state police, star 577, star LSP, go to the DOTD website, 511.org, or contact your local officials. Once again, we'll be here for the question and answers. That is a very small snapshot of a very larger operation. If you have any detailed questions, we'll be here to answer them. Thank you for y'all's partnerships. Without the partnerships in this room, it would be impossible to actually facilitate contraflow. Have any questions, I'll be here at the end. Thank y'all.
Right, thank you very much. So I'm really excited to get to the question and answers because I feel like that's where the greatest value ultimately could potentially come. And so I don't want to take too long. I'm not going to bore you with PowerPoint points, but I do want to cover just a few things. First, I started thinking about it as I was, what are some things that I took away from the different things that were said. And I'm actually going to start with the prayer that Councilman Strickland gave. He asked that we be blessed to be resilient. And that is one of my overarching goals for our parish. We can't necessarily control what happens to us, especially when we're talking about weather. There may be some people that believe you can, but it's just not true. But we can be prepared, and the better prepared we are, the better we'll be able to recover. And that's what resilience is that ability to recover, to come back in the face of a disaster. So I really appreciated that. President Cooper talked about the year-round preparedness efforts. I brag every time I get the chance to speak publicly about our first responders that we have here in St. Tammany Parish, and I'll include in that our public works and our utilities. So certainly our law enforcement and our fire and our EMS, but our public works and our utilities, they do such an amazing job. They just absolutely do. I believe we have the best, not just in the state, but probably in the whole southeastern United States. They cost avoid a lot of problems that would become much bigger because of their training, their skills, ability, quick decision, quick action, well-equipped, well-prepared. They just do an excellent job, and there's great coordination. And President Cooper also mentioned that coordination piece, which whether it's our first responders, whether it's our nonprofits, whether it's our utilities, our business community, that is something that we're very fortunate to have is good coordination amongst those agencies, and it's what makes us resilient. I really appreciated that. Julie Lesko, who is just such a great resource to have. Somebody that she said we work closely together. I rely on her opinions, especially when it comes to the rivers. She lives here in St. Tammany Parish and is just a dedicated servant to our community. Grateful for her. But she talked about using valid weather resources to make decisions. I think all of you do that. And I try to make sure that whatever I push out to you is, in fact, that kind of information. And she also mentioned looking at all of the risks and threats. I think that was a good statement she made. Because, and certainly hurricanes, the reason why there's such a focus on that is it brings all of the threats, all of the risks, weather-related, that we experience year-round. The potential for floods, for tornadoes, strong straight-line winds, lightning, flooding, all of the things that we deal with individually year-round, but all at once and over an entire region. General Mahfouz talked about the importance of recognizing most likely and most dangerous. And usually when I'm sending briefings out to many of you who are receiving those, we usually, that's what I try to focus on, particularly when it comes to weather. That's very important. It's going to help determine what actions we need to take in whatever realm of responsibility that we have in response and preparedness, and even in preparing for recovery. He talked about logistics, and I would say logistics. And he talked about making the decision what logistics you're going to stage and when, based on the most likely and most dangerous. That is important. And so one of the takeaways here is each one of us is going to have logistics needs. That's going to be one of the biggest issues, communications and logistics, that we're going to face. So hopefully each and every one of you, if you haven't already, many of you have, some of you, we've talked about it, have gone over your plans and maybe where there's gaps in what you may need. But be thinking about that as we're rapidly approaching the peak of hurricane season. Have those contracts in place. And I like what he said about focusing on the near term. There's so many distractions, so many other things to be worried about. Let's focus on this hurricane season, what we know, what's in front of us, and be prepared. Major Coniglio talked about the many resources that the National Guard, the 205th, that serves our parish, can provide. I'm grateful for them, and he mentioned the fact that we have LNOs, and most of you in here provide LNOs, but it's a liaison that is in our EOC, and it's helping us as requests come in for assistance or resources or whatever it is, helping us address those, and very grateful for the National Guard's persistent support in our EOC. And of course, the state police, he talked about organized chaos. And I was a responder in 2008, the one time we did contraflow, and we responded for hours and hours, every kind of emergency you could think of, as that sea of humanity under a tremendous amount of stress brought all of the baggage that they carry with them every day under stress and difficult situations in a slow-moving mass of humanity. Car fires, domestic disputes, drug overdose, car fires, breakdowns, accidents, road rage, you name it. And I am pretty confident that that's not going to be any better today than it was in 2008. In many instances, I'd say it'd probably be much worse. And so the good news is we're prepared if we need to implement contraflow. Hopefully that never ever happens. Because the other issue, and he kind of touched on this, is the amount of resources it draws down to deal with just that one thing when there's still all the preparations that need to be taking place and the responses that are continuing to happen, because the problems that we have every day, the 100+ emergencies that our first responders respond to every day in the parish, those are going to continue. They're not going to go away. In fact, they're probably going to spike up. And so if you're drawing those resources to manage traffic to get people to evacuate, to his point, we shouldn't have to wait for somebody to tell us to do the right thing. And so that's the message out to the public, to the community. Please, each individual, each family, each organization, business, government agency needs to assess their risk, needs to know what they're going to do if they stay, what they're going to do if they leave. And I say that because there's some government agencies here that might have to stage some resources out of harm's way depending on what it is we're being faced with. And so all those things need to be part of our plans, and hopefully we're thinking about that. And as he said, preparations start now. President Cooper said they're year-round, but now there needs to be a refocus, and so that's the message. And so I appreciate those things that I was able to take away from this. I just want to go over a couple of things that we've done that are maybe new for this year as we've tried to be better prepared, better able to serve and coordinate with you and our citizens. The first one is after the tornadoes, I very quickly learned what a challenge the human resource or the human services needs component of disasters is going to be. I knew it would be, but you know, it's not until you experience it that you really understand how challenging that can be. And so one of the things that we did is we entered into an agreement with Violink 211, and of course they provide their 211 service to everybody. It's free of charge, but we needed something more robust. We don't really have human services in the traditional sense here in St. Tammany. We have a mostly affluent community, but there are needs, and so there is a small component of that, and then we have a bunch of nonprofits that help support those that need it, but it's not like what it is in most counties or parishes that are our size. It's just not. And so one of the challenges that we have, because it's not a government program, is that we have a lot of nonprofits, faith-based groups that do tremendous work. There's many of them, but trying to organize that and know who to send where and what's available at what time. And that's sort of the goal of what we have with 211 is, one, that we would have a central place where whatever any entity or organization is providing, they can report that to 211, whatever the conditions are. If you only provide services when there's a disaster, then they'll note that. If you only do, let's say, well, we tarp roofs, and only if it's a hurricane, whatever, they'll note that. And so when someone calls in and is looking for that specific service under those conditions, they'll refer you, whatever information, whatever number, website, wherever you want them to go, they'll refer it. And then they're collecting information about that caller, very specific information that we contracted with them to collect for St. Tammany Parish, and that is being reported in a dashboard. If it's not a big disaster, it's just a phone call thing, or they'll send me an email, because I want to know every single solitary person from St. Tammany Parish that calls 211. It's how we begin to understand what the needs are. And then part of that agreement is they do a follow-up. So they'll give them whatever resources are available, and it might not be any, but they may refer them to some things, and then there'll be a follow-up with that individual or that family to see if the need was met. If it wasn't, we now know what the unmet needs are, and it helps us better work with particularly our nonprofits that are fundraising entities that can raise the funds or get the funds to help address those needs. By doing that, we're preventing having to create another government agency that maybe isn't needed. And so we really appreciate Violink 211, our partnership with them, and encourage all of our nonprofits to share either with us or directly with them what it is you provide. And that information on those unmet needs, we plan when we meet with our nonprofits and our faith-based groups to be able to talk about that, to be able to share that data out with you all so that we have data-driven, we're making data-driven decisions, and we're able to report that to those that are willing to donate to the cause. So we want to push that out for all your human services needs. We want people to call 211 here in St. Tammany Parish. The next thing that we did is we converted our emergency management software that we use as WebEOC, the same as the state. And something that you'll note about me is I tried to align with the state on everything that we possibly can. And so we use WebEOC. That's how we manage our incidents. But we went to a cloud-based version, which the state has now done, meaning that if we have an internet connection, we have access to WebEOC. We also simplified the process for our call takers who work in the EOC and are collecting information and entering it in. There's one single, it's called a board, but essentially one single page. It's sort of like a dispatch CAD, if you've ever seen one. Everything about that call that comes in is tracked. It's got a number, and every change that's made to it, every update is time-stamp tracked. You know who did it, when they did it, and that record's permanent. It can't be deleted. It can be modified, but it can't be deleted. And when it's modified, it timestamps and shows what modification was done. All in one place. The same exact place where you would make resource requests. So there's literally one place where we are able to manage the whole entire incident. And that's something new that we did. We created a guideline for how that process works, and we did training with many of your people on how that will work. We will continue to do more. In fact, we're planning to try and do something again in July. We also did that for those of you in government who would make a resource request to us. Same place, same way. We trained your people who we encourage you to choose people who are not in the EOC, who are there with you wherever you're operating from, who can make those requests on your behalf. And there's 3 forms that we're using that are the 3 forms that GOSEP requires if we have to go to them with that request. So the process is you would be prepared, you would have contracts, you'd have the resources you need to handle your realm of responsibility and whatever it is you do. If that fails, you would contact us. Hopefully we would have some way to be able to support you. If we don't, then that would move to the state, and we already have the forms we need. So it streamlines that process. Guideline has been written, training has been done for all of your liaisons or your resource officers for your entities. We have a new damage assessment for doing preliminary damage assessments. Again, I mentioned the partnership with the state. We partner with GOSEP using essentially their Virtual Louisiana platform. They shared their feature service with us. We have ArcGIS. We mapped it and created a damage assessment form that matches their data. So when we're out in the field doing a preliminary damage assessment, it's going to their Virtual Louisiana database. They can see it, FEMA can see it, and it's going to our database. We can see it. We're ingesting what they're taking in from the public, and so we'll be pushing everyone to use ladamage.gov, I believe is what it is, but it'll get pushed out. When people enter their damage assessments, we are ingesting that information. The state has it, we have it, and it's all real time. And there's no cost to that, to us, because the state's providing that service, and our GIS folks and their GIS folks are managing it. We also created a tool to divide that work up. So when there's a disaster and we're trying to get a scope of what's going on here, a common operating picture parish-wide, which is what the state needs, there needs to be a way to capture everything that's in a municipality and everything that's in unincorporated areas and see it all in the same place in the same way. And there needs to be a way to divide that work up. And so using what we call damage assessment zones, they're polygons instead of a grid system like FEMA teaches. Grids don't work when you're surrounded and bounded by water everywhere. But that polygon is designed to be able to access. There's access to every one of those. And so you can go into the tool, select the polygon where you're going to do a damage assessment. It turns it from red to yellow, meaning that it's in progress. And then when it's completed, it turns green. We can see that, they can see that, and we can see where the damage assessments are on the map. And we have a backup to use in the event that there is no internet. We've sent out those broken down by fire district and municipality, parish-wide, so that your folks can use that tool. Don't need internet, just have to have it saved. It's a digital PDF copy, and you can do the same thing and divide that work up and get it done. We are working on a road closure product that will work similarly. It will be in our dispatch center, so law enforcement dispatchers and fire dispatchers will have the ability to close a road, which that has been a sticking point for a long time. Public Works and LA DOTD, which is the Public Works for the state, they're responsible for those roadways. But in an emergency, we need to make sure there's no delay in closing them. So law enforcement and fire will have the ability to close the road. It will be one color and marked clearly when they do, so that they can see that that road was closed, and any actions they need to take, they're able to take, versus one that they closed. And we're hoping, there's been talks with DOTD to be able to ingest their state data, so you, again, common operating picture, you can see state roads and parish and city roads that are closed. One affects the other. If the state's closing roads and diverting traffic to parish roads, they need to know if that parish road they're diverting it to is open. It would be helpful. And likewise, we need to know the same for those state roads. Again, we'll just continue. There's more to come. We'll be leveraging technology to try and improve efficiency. And we'll continue to try and partner with all of our agencies and make all of this available to everyone. It's a work in progress. But those are just some of the things that we've done parish-wide to be prepared. And there's still, like I said, more to come. It's an ongoing year-round process.